ACP313, the Anti-COINTELPRO Show, the Anti-COINTELPRO Show news site, the Anti-COINTELPROShow.com, are the ACP313 Red Meat links. Let's not forget the original, the Anti-COINTELPRO Show YouTube channel. Yeah, that's where you found me this morning. Now that's all over and done with. Have you guys heard about this one? Well, I'm assuming you have not heard about this one because it dropped on the 27th of December. Now, I've been waiting, and I have been holding back just knowing that this story was going to be coming up in video after video. Just knew I was going to be seeing it on LinkedIn, or, well, that's the only social network that I have anything to do with any longer. No more Twitter, no more Parlay, the French way, the new red checkmark club member. Supposed to be the new Twitter. They're nothing but the old Twitter. They've just rebranded another CIA social club where, yeah, it's a big club, but you and I are not a member, and we never will be. So that being said, the story I'm referring to this morning is the story that I just knew would be sweeping the nation, but it never did. So here you go. JPMorgan, that's right, JPMorgan Chase, John Pierpont Morgan Chase Bank, to pay more than $135 million for improper handling of ADRs. The securities, and before we go any further, folks, this is a story that came out of FN, Finanznachrichten.de. It looks to be a German outfit, or somewhere around that region. So that being said, as I move on, the Securities and Exchange Commission announced that JPMorgan Chase Bank N.A. will pay more than $135 million to settle charges of improper handling of pre-released American Depository Receipts, or ADRs. New York City-based JPMorgan Chase Bank, doing business as Chase Bank, constitutes the consumer and commercial banking unit of JPMorgan Chase Company, or JPMorgan Chase and Company. In a statement, the SEC noted that ADRs / U.S. securities that represent foreign shares of foreign company require a corresponding number of foreign shares to be held in custody at a depository bank. The practice of pre-release allows ADRs to be, and folks, how is that different from fractional reserve banking? How is that any different from fractional reserve banking that the Zionists invented, the Zionists, or the Rothschild banking cartel Zionist sect? They invented fractional reserve banking that basically gives them the color of law to, once you put any given amount of deposit to your bank, they can then loan out 9 times whatever you deposited. So if you deposited $1,000, they would then be allowed, or are allowed by the color of law, they're allowed to loan out 9 times that. So if you put in 1,000 on deposit at whatever bank you're using, they loan out 10,000. Never existed, never will. It's sort of the same thing as speculations, right? And the speculators who have destroyed this country and have manipulated the metals market and every other market ad infinitum, right? And if you guys know anything about the metals market, I mean, 1 second it's moving with the dollar, another second it's moving against the dollar. I think I've learned how to gauge it on the flip-flop way they have of gauging their fake ass numbers and manipulations, but I'm not really sure because their manipulations change from second to second. Moving on, the SEC's order found that JPMorgan improperly provided ADRs to brokers and thousands of pre-release sanctions when neither the broker nor its customers had the foreign shares needed to support those ADRs. Folks, it's just like fractional reserve banking, which should be illegal, as is the Federal Reserve and any federal banks in the republic for which we all stand, but we're still laying down like the dogs that we are. Such practices resulted in inflating the total number of foreign insurers' tradable securities that resulted in abusive practices like inappropriate short selling and dividend arbitrage that should never have been occurring. The SEC noted that without admitting or denying the findings, of course, they never admit fault, do they? JPMorgan agreed to pay disgorgement of more than $71 million in ill-gotten gains, plus $14.4 million in prejudgment interest, and another $49.7 million in penalties for a total monetary relief of more than $135 million. The SEC order acknowledges JPMorgan's cooperation in the investigation and remedial acts. Of course they do, because they got their little cut off the top, didn't they? Out of that $135 million, how much did the SEC get to keep back in their coffers, in their little slush fund? Because it's all about you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. If the public ever gets wind of our stinky ass procedures and policies, then we'll just, spread perfume all over each other. And we'll abide the lie with each other because we're simpatico. We're Rothschild banking cartel Zionist. All of us. That's what they are. That's what I oppose. So that being said, what's really going on, folks? Well, what's really going on, and the reason nobody has heard about this, is the same reason Barry Biggers Obama, when he came into office, said he was going to fundamentally transform this country, and he did. Yeah, for a hot second or two, well, for about 6 or 7 years. He fundamentally transformed a working country into a chaotic mess. Did he not? With all of the SJW outrages of the day, of the second, right? Because they're outraged at any and everything all the time. That's what they're all about. Spreading their emotional outrage and their chaos across the country. But why? Well, the Fed is trying to throw as much chaos into the system by raising rates and then signaling and saying they're going to raise rates again. And we're going through the withdrawals of the heroin we call free money, or 0% interest rates. We're coming off that heroin withdrawal. And now they want to not offer any methadone, take away all of the drugs they have provided, well, since 2006, since they put us at 0% interest. And that was simply because of the housing bubble they created in 2006 with Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae and Franklin Raines at the head, tucking away money and using money for this Democratic fund and that Democratic fund, giving people houses that they knew they could never afford to pay for. Well, hell, they might not have known, but it was a don't ask, don't tell policy, right? Because they weren't asking these people. No, they were not getting any qualifications about income. They were just having them sign on the dotted line and sign their life away. So they could do the politically expedient thing, and you can thank the Rainbow Push Coalition And the No Justice, No Peace organization, that's, you know, Al Sharpton, the Reverend Al Sharpton, and, yeah, the other one, Jesse Jackson. Yeah, those two peas in a polluted pod. Now, they did their protest in 2006 and 2005 and 2007 around the country, and they forced these banks, because, you know, this is where they work, the same way that the radicals that have no rules showed up at Tucker Carlson's house and scared his wife into a cupboard, right? So that's the same thing they did in 2005, 6, and 7. The Rainbow Push Coalition and the No Justice, No Peace, the Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson outfits, the black male outfits. That's what they did. They showed up at these CEOs and these executives' houses for these banks, and they threatened them and they cajoled them. They called them racist and every name in the book. That, surprisingly, if you call them any of those names today, you know, you're evil, you're the enemy. Can't call a spade for a spade, because words are weapons, right? Actions are the only thing that mean anything in this world, but words are their weapons. That's why they try to change them and try to contort them and try to reconform reality into their insane perspective of the way the world does not work. And they don't want it to work. And you can thank Cloward and Piven, or the Cloward-Piven strategy, for this. Cloward-Piven strategy is the same strategy that Obama used to fundamentally disrupt and transform this country into something that we don't recognize anymore, and haven't for a few years. Now, he jumped the shark whenever he, you know, in his education department said it's okay for little boys and, you know, little girls to use the same restroom. It's okay for grown men in a dress pull out their loggerheads and use the restroom beside our daughters. Well, that's when Texas and the country followed Texas shortly thereafter and said, keep your trinkets of silver and gold. We don't need them. We have our daughters and our sons, our children, our culture to protect, and we will. Because we knew this for what it was, nothing more, nothing less than the Cloward-Piven strategy that started, wait for it, in 1966. The strategy was outlined 1966. Why does that year sound familiar? Oh yeah, I was born in 1966. Many years before the term welfare reform actually became politically incorrect. The United States welfare system, and this was what the Cloward and Piven strategy was. Here's a little background on it. The United States welfare system in 1966 was not all to the liking of the strategy's authors. That's Richard Cloward, and Francis Fox Piven, a husband and wife team of sociologists. And I'm not going to read the rest of it. The pair favored a centralized, federally ran system guaranteeing a minimum income for everybody, therefore wiping out poverty. Oh, they're so virtuous, aren't they, guys? They are so virtuous. The strategy. Cloward and Piven had determined that people in the U.S. were eligible for welfare, but were not receiving it. They believed that all of these people, if they were to apply for welfare at once at the local welfare office, that it would overwhelm the United States and it would threaten bankruptcy. In advocating such disruptions, Cloward and Piven, and this is the same thing the Fed is doing, trying to overwhelm the United States and trying to finish what Big Ears Barry Obama started, folks. So in advocating for such disruptions, Cloward and Piven were making a deliberate attempt to incite racial, ethnic, and class tensions, setting whites against racial minorities and middle-class liberals against working-class immigrant groups. This would weaken the already fragile New Deal liberal coalition and threaten the Democratic Party politically, which would cause the Democrats to institute a new welfare scheme in an attempt to maintain the cohesiveness of their coalition and thus remain in power. If all of this sounds familiar, folks, it's because we're experiencing this. Cloward and Piven strategy to use the welfare system, along with racial animosities and ethnic animosity and class tensions, right along with the emotional outrage about the poor migrant caravans or the immigrant groups. So they're using all of these groups and all of these classes against each other. They are using every conceivable tool possible to cause chaos and disruption in our system. Now, Obama tried to do this on the cultural grounds, and now the Fed is trying to finish what Obama started using the financial aspect of the Cloward and Piven strategy, folks. Because if you're married, or you ever been married, hell, if you've ever been in a long-term relationship, you will know the number one enemy of any relationship is money, right? If you don't have money to pay the bills, people are going to be fighting with each other. And that's what's going on. Just take a look at the local news around you. I just watched a story in Connecticut where they had to shut down an entire mall because the young minority youths were going around starting fights with everybody. This is not, organic in nature, folks. This is the Cloward and Piven strategy being forced onto the public by the deep state, by the globalists, by all of the Rothschild banking cartel minions and this is including George Soros, the Koch brothers, or the Koch bros as I call them, Tom Steyer, Carlos Slim, Sheldon Adelson, all of the Billionaire Boys Club members that owe everything to the Rothschild banking cartel are now having their accounts being called. All of the favors that are due are now being paid in spades. All being paid in spades, folks. All of them. This is a last-ditch effort as we watch country after country awake and arise and stand on their feet instead of being knelt on ground with their ass in the air. Now we stand with our chin in the air. Head held high, we are all fighting against the evil that is Cloward and Piven. That is the deep state, that is the globalist, that is the Rothschild banking cartel, that are all of the parasites of society that have to cause disruption and distraction, because if we ever collectively turn our gaze at them, those who have tried to kill societies, civilization around the globe for their own personal agenda and benefit, if we ever turn our gaze at them collectively, they're dead. So they have to distract us. They have to force us to fight with each other. They have to take away our jobs, take away our ability to communicate with each other using their SJW PC policies to not only censor, but to control speech, thought, and movement in the nation and around the world. Because if they don't control everything, they lose everything. And they're about to lose and lose badly. So this is not the time to give up, to give in, to cower. Because we don't cower to Cloward and Piven. No, we do not Cloward and Piven. We do not cower to Cloward. We pivot on Piven. We go the other way because we are, at our core, Americans, patriots, traditionalists. We are mothers and fathers. We are sisters and brothers. We are family. And you're parasites. And we are about to eradicate the parasites. Not for good, because they never go away for good, folks. Freedom isn't free. The price for freedom, as you know, is eternal vigilance. When we get too comfortable and too entitled, well, we have to remind ourselves what we are fighting and who we are fighting. That being said, this is Joe Wayne, the always under attack Joe Wayne. Hey guys, please think about giving to the fund, the GoFundMe fund. Trying to get my stem cell replacement so that I can actually maybe work a real job one day. Because my body doesn't work that well. I was diagnosed with MD over 10 years ago. And the degenerative issues associated with muscular dystrophy and the stress related to my channel being demonetized, the stress related to all the advertising companies out there refusing to work with me because I have been targeted and marked for death by Google and YouTube and all of big tech for my big mouth. So please think about donating to the PayPal Me address. Please think about donating to the GoFundMe so that I can keep God's good work a thing. That being said, this is Joe Wayne with the Anti-COINTELPRO Show and all the aforementioned. Good day and good luck. Have a great Saturday.